Hello again and welcome to another Warhammer 40k Imperial Guard video, and today guys we are going to be doing a deep dive on the new Cadian shock troop models, going through everything we know about them and the differences between this kit and the old kit. So in case you missed it, Games Workshop did a load of reveals for the new Imperial Guard models and they look absolutely great. Now I'm going to have a link down to the Warhammer community article where you can see these pictures, and at the end of this video I'm also going to have a link to the deep dive that I did on the Cadia Stands box set, so you can get loads of extra information there. I also did a big live stream that covered all of the reveals as they came out live, and there's loads of extra information in there as well, and you can find that on the live stream playlist of this channel. But without further ado, let's crack on with this deep dive. Now, the first thing to cover is that Games Workshop did confirm that you could use these new infantry models as either a specific Cadian Shock Troops infantry squad datasheet, or you could use them as a standard guardsman squad as well, and there will be a few differences between those two units. So that does confirm one of the rumors that we were talking about, which was that Cadians are going to get their own special datasheet. However, GW did dispel one of the other rumors that we've talked about, which is they confirmed that if you run these guys as a standard guardsman infantry squad, you will be able to include a heavy weapon team in that squad. So really cool from GW to confirm those rumors. That's really good. Now what that means is that if you take them as a standard infantry squad, you can take a classic special and heavy weapon combo that we all know and love. But if you take them as a Cadian shock troop squad, you get to not take a heavy weapon, but instead you can take, they said, additional special weapons. Now, when we've looked at the pictures of these squads and their big full 10-man makeup, it looks like you can take 2 special weapons as a Cadian shock troops, but you can't take a heavy weapon. Kind of interesting that we've seen them be able to take only 2 special weapons. If you look at the traitor guardsman squads, they can take 3 special weapons, but they can't double up on any of them. Now, we don't yet know if the Cadian shock troop squads will be able to double up. That means, will they be able to take 2 plasma, 2 melter, 2 flamer, 2 grenade? We don't know yet. All we know is that they can take 2 special weapons. But when we've seen the pictures of the big 10-man squads, they're having 2 different special weapons in there. So that's just something we're going to have to wait for more information on. But we very well may have a situation where you can't take double plasma, but you've got to take a plasma and a melter. But again, that very much could just be GW showing off as many of the new options as they can and not worrying too much about the competitive loadout for these new models. Another thing that we've noticed is that we have seen special weapon options for plasma, melter, grenade launcher and flamer, but we haven't seen a sniper rifle special option for these Cadian shock troopers. That may hint to the fact that they don't get to take sniper rifles in the Cadian shock troop squads. Now that's kind of interesting, and we don't, again, that's not confirmed yet, but that would kind of fit in with what they said on the GW live stream, where they were like, Cadian shock troops are masters of moving forward, always being aggressive, always attacking. They are shock troops, and that way they don't take heavy weapons. Now, a lot of people assumed that meant heavy weapons as in, heavy bolters, missile launchers, lascans, but sniper rifles technically have the heavy weapon profile as well. They are heavy 1. Now, that would mean that it wouldn't really fit in with the style of the Cadian shock troops. So they very well may not be able to take sniper rifles within the datasheet Cadian shock troops. That to me hints that there's a possibility that the current guardsman squad is going to stay. I know a lot of people have assumed that the current guardsman squad with the new upgrades through it is going to go the way of the dodo, but we just don't know that yet. And if they haven't got sniper rifles in the new kits, to me that hints that they're going to keep that old shock troop kit around, which I know that'll just become a generic guardsman kit. Now, just before we get into the deep dive on the differences between these models and the old ones, I know one question that's going to be on a lot of people's minds is, are these kits monopose and can I swap bits between kits? And GW confirmed in the stream that you would be able to mix parts between the new kits. They didn't mention if you'd be able to mix parts between the existing kit and the new kits. We don't know that at this juncture, but they did confirm that you would be able to mix parts between the Cadian Shock Troop kit and the upcoming Command Squad kit. Now, don't worry, I'll be covering the Command Squad in excruciating detail in an upcoming video. Now, to be clear, GW said you'd be able to mix parts. And then they said that, for example, you'd be able to swap heads. They didn't mention anything outside of swapping heads, but they didn't say, you know, oh, it's only head swaps either. I think, looking at these models, and we'll get into a bit more of a deep dive on it in a moment to back up why I think this, but I think that you'll be able to have quite a lot of interchangeable parts between the two new Cadian Shock Troop kits that we've seen, which is the Command Squad and the Infantry Squad. So now let's take a look at these new models, and I really like them. I think that GW has done a fantastic job. I think, you know, some people say they prefer the old school sort of helmet and all that kind of stuff, but me personally, I really like them, and I'll tell you a couple of reasons why I like them. Firstly, they're a little bit more realistically proportioned. I feel like the current Guardsman kit, whilst a classic, they do have really big heads. So it's nice to see things that are a little bit more realistically proportioned. Secondly, I think there's a lot of hints here, a lot of throwbacks to the original metal Cadians. And you guys know I love my original metal models. The helmet style certainly fits that, and so does the webbing style. Now, I really like that for two reasons. One, I like it as a bit of a reference. I like it from a modeling point of view. I personally thought that the original Cadians actually looked better than the, well, I say quote unquote new ones, because these are the new ones, but you know, the current Guardsman kit. And I also like it from like a fluff perspective, because you could easily argue that the Cadians obviously, you know, updated their kit and they always have the good stuff. But now that they're struggling, you know, now that Cadia has sadly fallen, they're having to pull out equipment that, you know, that had been put into storage, you know, second and third line equipment. So I quite like that hint. I quite like that idea that this isn't a new style of equipment. They're having to go back and use older style helmets and older style webbing patterns. I really like as well, and you'll see this as we go through, but they've got at least 4 different varieties of lasgun in the kit as well. Now, I really like that you've got some with like folding stocks here and pistol grips. You've got some which have got rifle grips and full stocks. You've got one guy who's had to repair a stock. I really like it. They're definitely leaning into the vibe of Guardsman being a little bit more grizzled, a little bit more veteran, and also it kind of links into that real life idea, which, you know, a lot of soldiers tweak and modify their kit a little bit, so it's just perfect for them. But that sort of covers the overall vibe of the models. Let's do a deep dive on the differences. So firstly, let's start from the bottom and work our way up. And we're going to go through all these different models that you can see on the GW screen there. So we're going to go through all of these different ones in a moment. So firstly, let's take a look at this first model. And you've got, let's start at the bottom and let's look at the boots. Okay, now these boots are significantly different to the current ones. They don't have the ankle armor or anything like that anymore. Instead, they actually have a World War II Ranger style gaiter on them. If you ever go watch Saving Private Ryan, you'll notice that a lot of the Rangers have these gaiters on their boots, and it's actually really cool. So I quite like that. It's also a little bit like the old pooties used to have in like World War II, but you know, they were sort of leg strappings, where these are, you know, that's what you find sort of pooties on the Krieg models, and then these guys have got gaiters. Kind of cool that they're leaning into, you know, Krieg having the World War I pooties, and then the Cadians having the World War II stuff. Kind of shows the, you know, differences between those two sort of regiments. Moving on to the trousers, the big standout feature here is the new knee pads. Now, I know a lot of people are a little cold on these knee pads. Personally, I like them, okay? Nothing wrong if you don't like them. You know, everyone's allowed their own opinion and everything. I quite like them because it feels like GW is trying to modernize the soldier slightly. We've talked about them going back to old patterns of kit, and maybe there's some like World War II references in there, but I also kind of like that they're halfway between like a modern soldier and a World War II soldier. Maybe something like, you know, like sort of Korean War. But I really like this because a lot of soldiers these days, a lot of proper militaries, professional militaries, have trousers with knee pads in them. And I think it does make a big difference. So I kind of like this mixture of modern and sort of, you know, pre-modern aesthetic. But yeah, I think the knee pads, you know, they make it look a little bit realistic. The one thing I would say is that in real life, a lot of the time you find the knee pads, they're internal. They don't look quite as external like this. They're sort of just within the pants, and when you don't really see them, and you don't really see them. But I think if GW had done that, it would have looked like, you know, weird lumps on the front of the trousers. So I think they've gone for that look. We want to show them a bit more modern, but we've got them on the outside so the trousers don't look a bit weird and malformed. I get it. I understand why some people don't like it. My advice would be, if you just paint these trousers all one color, like if you've painted them all in the tan sort of color here, then they won't look quite as garish, and they won't stand out quite as much. And I think they'll actually look then like internal knee pads, and you know, that'll look really, really good. Especially if you think about that, like all these are tan with a wash over them. I think that would look really good. So even if you don't like the knee pads, they look like they're quite protruding as well. So you could easily, you know, scrape that off if you wanted to. But for me, I just paint it all tan and then give it a wash, and it'll look like an internal knee pad. Moving on, we've got the new coat style as well. So the old Cadian kit, you never had any of the coats at the front being split open like this. It was never like that. They were always joined up at the front and slightly sort of flapped over. These also seem significantly longer. If you notice, most of the trouser pocket is actually covered up. And in the current kit, it's not like that at all. You've got the very obvious trouser pockets on every single one of them. So that's interesting. Got longer coat design there. You've then got, moving on to, on the split front, you've then got moving on to the equipment pouches. Now, first thing to mention is the belt buckle has changed. It used to just be a simple press stud. Now it's clearly a skull motif. Just something, you know, to notice. The grenades seem a similar pattern, although slightly different. They remind me more of Space Marine grenades rather than of Imperial Guard grenades. If you go and look at the Imperial Guard ones, they've got lots and lots of these little squares on them, whereas the Space Marine ones have fewer, bigger, more spaced out ones, a bit like this. So these remind me of more like Space Marine grenades than the current Imperial Guard ones. Obviously, we didn't get pistol holsters in the old kit. We've got them now, and you can see there's a variety of different pouch sizes here. So you've got this really big pouch back here, that's reminiscent of the early ones. And looking over on this guy, you've got smaller pouches. In fact, that's a small pouch, that's a big pouch, and that's an even bigger pouch. So it looks like we've got a variety of pouch sizes. Speaking of the pouches as well, it looks like to me that these are going to have been molded on. Okay, now currently pouches aren't molded on. You stick them on and you can configure them however you want. I feel like, and I don't know this for certain, but I feel like, especially looking at this guy with, with the empty one and the full one, that these pouches are going to be molded on. Now, to me, and especially looking at the way the webbing is designed and the way it links in down here, obviously we're looking at sort of two models at once here. To me, that makes me think that these are, whilst not monopose, I think that you're going to have them with the bottoms and the tops. So we're talking chest and legs. They're going to be one piece. If you want an idea of this, if you ever look at a bolt action kit from Warlord Games, they always have the legs and the bodies molded into one, and then you play around with the arms and you play around with the heads. Now, that means that there will be less customization. But it's not uncommon to see them do that in other games companies and with other kits within GW. As long as it's not front part, as in like back of chest, back of legs that get glued onto, front of legs, front of chest. As long as it's not that, it'll be okay. But I don't think it is, because if you have a look, there's no telltale lines down here with the legs. There's no telltale lines down here with the chest. You can't. I don't think that's the case. My suspicion will be that the legs and the chest will be all one piece, and then the majority of the equipment will be one piece. You may find things like this pistol aren't one piece, and that some of these extra grenades might not be one piece. But I suspect that the webbing and the legs and the chest are all going to be one piece, and then you're going to have some options to add some extra little bits of equipment, including the backpacks most likely, and then you're also going to have the arms and the heads, which are going to be separate. That would be my prediction when it comes to the level of monopose and customization that you have with these models. Moving on to some of the other details. Here we've got a little rebreather kind of pack there, similar to a Steel Legion one. It could be a walkie-talkie / radio. That could be a mouthguard. It could be a rebreather. Not entirely certain. We've obviously got webbing straps here. We didn't used to have webbing straps. Apparently all guardsmen ran around with a bit of a battle belt rather than any sort of webbing or chest rig or anything like that. So we've finally got some proper webbing straps there. Now looking at the shoulder pad design, if we look up here, you can see now it's no longer a single big chunky shoulder pad. We've now got two smaller shoulder pads, one top bit, one bottom bit, reminiscent of the Krieg one, although the Krieg one definitely feels a little bit more segmented, and this one feels a little bit more sort of maybe it just doesn't feel quite like the Krieg one. It's similar but different would be my vibe with it. Then we've also obviously got the helmet. Now this is the much more slimmed down, narrow tridome style helmet. Still very much a tridome. You've got the the bits on the side, which is good, but this lip is much narrower as well. It's still a embossed, a winged skull. It's not an aquila. One big thing to mention actually is none of these models have aquillas on them. If you actually take a look, obviously you've got one on the chain. That's not even that's an aquila. That's a skull and wings there. If you actually look, there used to be an aquila on every single guardsman's chest, and we don't see that anymore. So there's no aquila anymore, and we're not, but we obviously have got the wing, the classic wing skull on the helmet. It seems to be slightly less pronounced than it does in the current kit. The current kit is a very, very pronounced wing skull, but slightly less pronounced than this one. Obviously, we're going to be taking a look at the lasgun pattern as well. This is a Voss pattern lasgun, very reminiscent of the old metal steel Legion ones. It's got a folding metal stock. It's got a pistol grip. So that's cool. We'll see it, like I said earlier, we've got loads of different patterns of lasgun in this kit. Another minor detail to mention is the cuffs have changed as well. We've now got a much more pronounced folded back cuff, and it's got two buttons. That's on either side. And we've also got armor straps as well round here, so it's no, you can see we've got a little armor strap here and a little armor strap there, and then of course big change here. This is a new type of sergeant head. Gone is the Lego man haircut with the gamer headset. Now we have got a proper sort of field cap for the head, and it has a little radio built into it. I quite like the field cap. Cool. Obviously as well, female head. Obviously, well, I suspect that's a female head there. So yeah, different genders will be able to build female guardsmen in there. I suspect you'll get enough head swaps to build a whole squad of female ones, whole squad of male ones, or everything in between. One other thing to mention, and this is on all of the models, is these new sort of neck brace style things. If you have a look, you've got the armor. It goes all the way up to here, all the way up to here. This whole sort of head and armor pattern design very much reminds me a little bit of the Halo 1 Marines, which I quite like. The Halo 1 Marines I thought were really, really cool. And also a little bit of like Alien Colonial Marines as well. The helmet feels very Alien Colonial Marines, and the rest of it sort of makes it feel a little bit like Halo Marines. Interesting, it's like neck and cheek armor. I don't know what that is. I don't know if there's something similar to it in real life. It definitely sort of feels a little bit like a spacesuit or something. It feels like you could have you could put a rebreather mask on top and some big gloves, and you would have some sort of self-contained sealed uniform. I don't know. Also, maybe it's interesting. I don't know if they're wearing some sort of body glove underneath. Maybe maybe someone said it's a bit like Under Armour. Maybe it's like Under Armour. I don't know. It's an interesting design choice. I'm not against it. I definitely feel like it makes painting the models a little bit easier. No need to try and get your skin tone down there around the neck, and it all starts going on your cuffs and your the rest of your uniform. So I think it would make painting the models a little bit easier. But it's an interesting choice. I genuinely don't know what it is. It almost reminds of some like Space Marine black carapace almost, but obviously external, not internal. Obviously, other thing to mention, different style of collar as well. Rather than having the old collar was very muted. Now I've got collar. It's got a couple of buttons on it. Again, you can see that on that guy as well. So there's lots of things to talk about in these new models. They're all sort of the uniform differences. We're not going to go through those every single time, guys. Now let's take a look at the other models that GW has shown off here. So if we move over to the next one, we can see we've got another pattern of lasgun here. You can see this one has not got a folding stock. It has got a full stock. It's got a sling mount, a pronounced sling mount as well, which is cool. And also it has not got a pistol grip. It's very much got a rifle grip. Very much reminds me of an M14. Very much reminds me of an M14. Some people are saying it looks a little bit like the Deathcore Krieg one. I don't I don't agree with that. I think it's similar to it because of the rifle grip rather than the pistol grip. But for me, that smacks of M14 in space, which is cool. Kind of leans into the whole, Vietnam, not post World War II, but not quite ultra modern soldier kind of thing that they're going for. I have to say, I quite like the new pattern of lasgun. It's just a shame, again, it doesn't have a. If we go back and look at it on this side, there's no eagle on the lasgun anymore. There's no pressed eagle on them. If we go through and take a look at them, there's no pressed eagle on any of the lasguns on either side. We do have it on like the melter guns and stuff, but yeah, no pressed eagle. Oh, there's one on the side there. Cool, but that's definitely an older style lasgun. We'll get to that one in just a moment. So yeah, interesting that there doesn't seem to be as many details on the lasgun. It definitely, I do quite like the new pattern. Moving on, we've got a new kind of Voxcaster here. It's got a totally different ring. This used to be a big circle. Now it's more of an oval. Looks like a more trimmed down Voxcaster. We don't appear to have the old Vox grill style helmet. It's not been seen on any of the models that have been shown off so far. Instead, we have a Vox set with a sort of speaker horn kind of thing going on there, which is kind of cool. It makes a lot of sense. I mean, in the books, there's loads of references to Voxmen handing the sort of control over to the officer, handing them something, and but you couldn't do that on the old kit. There was nothing there to show that. It was just some dude with a big Vox grill. So it's cool that they've changed that now. It looks a little bit like the Scion one, but it's obviously different. The Scion one is a big old school like sort of field telephone. This very much looks more like a walkie-talkie. Over here, we've obviously got backpacks. We should have mentioned that before. We've got backpacks, two different styles of backpack. You've got one here with sort of the smaller bedroll over the top. You've got one here with a sort of a bigger, sort of chunkier thing going on there. And then we've also got the plasma gun. Now, a couple of things to mention here. The plasma gun does not have a stock. The current plasma gun that you can get in the Command Squad kit does have a stock. This one doesn't have a stock. It has got a shoulder sort of sling as well, which is again something we don't have. Also, if you look here, fingerless gloves. Very cool, fingerless gloves there. So yeah, and obviously we've got a slight variation on what's going around here. I don't know what that is. It's some sort of ankle bracelet. Not sure what it is. Maybe it's got like an Aquila or some sort of good luck charm attached to it. But yeah, or maybe it's like an ankle knife or holster or something. I'm not sure. But yeah, overall, it's a very different design of plasma gun. It seems without the big stock, it does seem a little bit shorter, but it feels chunkier. It might not be as chunky when we see it, but it feels like it's going to be a chunky boy. Pre-drilled barrel is nice though, unless they've done that obviously for the picture. But I think that's going to be it's not a drill barrel. It's you no longer need to drill your plasma gun barrels, which is kind of cool. Yeah, that I see potentially a little dagger coming down here as well. And obviously goggles on the helmet's not something we've got at the moment. And again, little bits of damage on helmets and stuff like that. Something we've not seen previously. All good as far as I'm concerned. Moving on, we've then got another couple of squads. Now we've got a flamer guy here. Now this flamer guy to me is quite interesting. It's reminiscent of the old flamer. Very reminiscent of the old flamer. Obviously, like I said, we've got a bit of a recessed barrel here. But, very similar. The arm holding it on the side there. Guy holding it down here. Very different tube, though. Very different tube. The old tube was smooth, and I'm sure many of you will agree with me. It was an absolute ball ache to try and get the old flamer tube linked up to the flamer fuel backpack. That is a different tube there for certain. But yeah, it's got an eagle on it. To me, this feels like this part here feels a little bit like maybe a reused asset. It looks very similar to the old flamer. Right up to this point, it looks very similar. Very, very similar. I've got no issue with them reusing assets, as long as it keeps things looking consistent, that's fine. But yeah, this tube definitely looks a bit different. And obviously, this sort of pre-drilled barrel kind of thing, as well. It's not really pre-drilled, but no longer need to drill the barrel on the flamer is pretty good as well. Overall, it's a small improvement, I would say, but not as big a change as with the plasma gun. Taking a look at some other bits, obviously we've got the faces covered up here. That's very cool. I really like that GW has started including lots more face coverings in their models. Some people like painting faces, some people don't. I personally am not a big fan of painting faces, so having something like this which makes it super easy You know, all I need to do is sort of strip a little bit of flesh down, little strip of flesh down there, and then it's done. Super easy. Other things to mention, he's got what looks like a little bit of bandage or something that's strapped to his bit of webbing there. And yeah, that's mostly all of it. A little bit of finger discipline, trigger discipline there could be improved slightly. But yeah, overall, it's pretty good. Again, this Flamer backpack, we obviously haven't seen it from the back yet, but that looks very similar to the current Flamer backpack. This definitely looks as very similar, both of these parts, to the current kit. We've also got some stuff up here, so we've got a better look at that kind of backpack. You can see it's sort of a smaller backpack with a little bedroll on top there. First look at the water bottle. This is a different water bottle design for sure. The old water bottle had flaps that came over the top like that. This one is more of a, I don't know what you'd call it, but it's like a little sort of T-shaped sling there. Not sure I prefer that, to be honest. Not sure I prefer it. It seems a little impractical, but what do I know? I'm not a soldier. So it's interesting. Reminds me of the ones that you see on bolt action models. A lot of the bolt action sort of water bottles are like this, especially some of the Japanese ones and the German ones. So kind of interesting design choice there. What looks like a penknife. Very cool. It's like a penknife down here as well. Very interesting. Better look at those gaiters as well. You can see the strap goes underneath the boot. We've got 3 buttons on it. And then I've got another look at the lasgun, and this looks like iron sights. Very interesting. No longer will we have a strange sort of tubey sort of laser dot thingy on the top. It looks like now we're going to have iron sights. Interesting that they've gone with iron sights. Again, this very much feels like halfway between World War II and a modern day soldier. I'm getting Korean vibes. I'm getting Vietnam vibes. It's very interesting. I have to say, I do quite like it. I do quite like it. Definitely feels very Imperial Guard. Looks like a soldier, but it's like a Vietnam soldier running around with a laser gun. Imagine if they had laser guns in Korea. That's the vibe that I'm getting from it. Okay, so moving on to the next couple of soldiers we've got here. We've got a melter gunner and we've got another las gunner. So looking at the melter gun, a couple of things that stand out here. Firstly, this melter gun is pretty similar to the one that we currently have. Obviously, the strap is new, but it's pretty similar. It's got the eagle on the front. It's got the pipe hanging down underneath. Very similar to the current command squad one. Big difference for me, this power pack feels bigger. This power pack feels significantly bigger. I don't know what you guys think, but the old power pack looked a little bit less pronounced. That for me seems to be the big difference between the current melter gun and this one. Obviously, the Vietnam style sort of helmet covering as well. Very, very cool. One thing I have noticed, we've not seen any helmet netting. They've all been sort of smooth, or they've had a helmet cover on like this, but we've not seen any sort of helmet netting or scrim or anything like that. Possibly a bit of a missed opportunity by GW there. A lot of soldiers, to this day still scrim up their hats and shove bits of leaves and stuff in them if they're going through jungle and all that kind of stuff. So possibly a little bit of a missed opportunity there. But focusing on the positives for a moment, I really like this helmet cover style. I really like it. Really just adds that extra level of detail and makes the kit look a bit different than just the old kit. Really makes the helmet again stand out and different sort of feel. And it's cool. What would be cool would be if you could have whole squads with this kind of helmet covering, but I suspect that won't be the case. Taking a look at this chap's lasgun, you can see that he's got what looks like a repaired stock here. Now, if we sort of take a look, if I scroll over one here, you can see this stock here, very much same color, molds in to the rifle, all very good. If we come back to this one, it's not the same, it's a different color. That's a cool little bit of fine detail. To me, that feels like his old stock maybe broke, maybe used to shatter an orc's skull or to beat down some chaos cultists or something, and his old stock shattered. And so he's had to replace it with a new one. He sort of wrapped it up with a bit of tape. Yeah, really, really cool. I like that. I like that little bit of sort of extra fine detail there. Interesting, one thing to mention that I haven't mentioned so far is the leg poses. Firstly, we've got no crouching people, which is interesting. I think that they said on the, they made a little joke on the GW stream where they were like, oh, well, none of the models are going to crouch because Cadian stands. And I thought that was kind of funny. I wonder if that is something that genuinely went into the design team's minds. I would say the overall leg poses are greatly improved. One of the problems I had with the old guard leg pose, I'm sure you guys would agree, is there's that one guy who seems to be sort of trying to run forward, but his knees seem to be locked together. That sort of old pose. And he's only got like a tiny smidge of surface area on his foot to glue it onto the base, and that they're the one models that always seem to snap off at the base. So it's good to see that we've got what, when we have got running models, we've got one foot firmly planted on the ground. That is definitely going to give you lots of purchase when you're gluing these guys onto their bases. No longer will, lockstep knee running guy be haunting my dreams. Got the classic grenade throwing arm as well. Again, you can see slightly different pattern of grenade like I was mentioning before. I feel like the old pattern's definitely got a lot more sort of bobbles on it, but I could be wrong there. But a classic grenade throwing arm looks a little bit more thrown back this time, which is good. I always found the old grenade throwing arm to be a little... look like is he pulling the arm back? Is he pulling the arm forward? It's a little sort of weird, the old grenade throwing arm. Cool, don't get me wrong, love the old grenade throwing arm, but I do think this is a small yet important difference and improvement. Moving on, we then have got these soldiers here. And so one thing to mention is we've noticed is the webbing shops do have these little buckles, which are cool. We've seen, and on this side, it seems to be where they've added a little bit of variety. So this guy's got a grenade. If we go back, look here, he's got a little ammo pouch. If we go back here, he's got like a little bandage or something. If we go back here, he's got a little ammo pouch there. So it is kind of cool to see if we cycle back. We've got a little rebreather one here, and then we go, we're back where we are. So what goes around comes around. So it's kind of cool to see that they've added the variety there. Interesting new helmet design there as well. Got a little something stuck at the top, maybe a box of matches or something like that. That's kind of cool. Again, different pouch design here. Feels integrated to me. Just where if you look at that, that's not much of a gap there. There doesn't seem to be a seam there. There doesn't seem to be a seam. So for me, like I said, I feel like these legs and whatnot will be integrated. That's just what it feels. I could be wrong, guys. I could be wrong, but that's what it feels like. Looking at the weapon patterns here, this is an old style las carbine. It's kind of similar to what the Catachan, literally the current Catachan models get. It's got a pistol grip. It's got a full stock. It's got a slightly recessed, pulled back sort of top sight thingy, and then it's got this sort of longer, little bit of sort of barrel here. If you look at the Cadian ones, the sight comes, the current Cadian one's sight comes all the way up to here. So interesting, looks a little bit more like a las carbine to me. Maybe it's just a reinvention of the current Cantrell pattern. But yeah, overall, it's all right. This one looks most similar to the las guns that we've currently got. And it's the only one with a little eagle on it, which is cool, which is interesting. Now, one thing to mention, looking at this guy, he's obviously got the pattern that we were talking about before. This is like the M16 pattern. This is like the M14 pattern. So yeah, I mean, I tell you what, I do like having lots of different lasgun patterns. Definitely, I mean, in my current army, I won't go off on a big tangent, guys. In my current guard army, it's made up of all sorts of models. I've got some old Cadians, some old Mordians. I've got the current Cadian kit in there. I've got Last Chancer models. I've got little bits of Scions. It's all mashed together. And I really like all the variety of war gear and loadouts and patterns that it gives it. So I really like that GW has embraced that as well. That's really cool. One thing to notice, this guy has taken what looks to be like a stub round in the chest. Don't know if that's been lodged in and he's pulled it out, but he's definitely taken a hit in his center armor there, which is kind of interesting. Or maybe the previous occupant of this armor is now dining at the Emperor's table and he's been reassigned someone's kit. A bit grim dark there. Now, I do have one major criticism of the new Guardsman kit. Major criticism of it, which is there is a distinct lack of bayonets. We go and look through. There's no bayonet. There's a bayonet mount, or that might be a sling mount. There's a bayonet, sort of a place bayonet could go there, but there's no bayonet there. There's no real comfortable place where it looks like to put one. Now, again, no bayonet there on the lad's carbine. We've got a chainsword, but that's not a bayonet. Obviously, no bayonet on the special weapons, but I mean, that would be cool, but I wouldn't expect it. No bayonets on there. No bayonets there. No bayonet on the flame. Obviously, there wasn't in the old one, but, you know, no bayonets on any of the las guns. Yeah, distinct lack of bayonets. Now, that for me is a big shame. And I really, really, really hope that GW has included the parts for bayonets and they're just not molded in. And if you want to add them on, you can add them on. I really hope that is the case. It is such an iconic thing for the guard to do. Fix bayonets, charge out them. Everyone knows the heretics don't like it up them. All that kind of stuff. How many of us, when we've been having a game, have said with such relish, fix bayonets before we've charged our guys into combat? Every guard player does it. Every guard player does it. So I really, really hope that they fix the lack of bayonets. For me, it is honestly it's the biggest drawback in the UK. They've got everything else perfect. The lack of bayonets. It disturbs me greatly. It shakes me to my core. I know I'm being a little bit jokey about it, but honestly, it'd be such a shame if they didn't have them. Considering that they're in the Cadian stands artwork, it's a bit strange. Like I said, fingers crossed, they just haven't included them on these models, and you absolutely will be able to include bayonets. Hopefully, that'll be the case. But right now, I ain't seeing any. Now, one last thing that I want to do is take a quick look at some of the bigger pictures that we've seen of the Cadian shock troops, the more zoomed out ones, I should say. So these are the two squads that were shown by Games Workshop for the promotional material for the Cadian Stands box set. Overall, they look pretty good. They've got some poses that we've not seen already in the pictures that we were just looking at. For example, you've got Mr. Knife Hand over here. You've got this guy who seems to be sort of shoulder barging his way forward. You've got this guy that seems to be firing from the hip. Not sure what this guy's got in his hand, but there's definitely something in his hand there. If we maybe go for a little zoom in, you know, he's definitely got something in his hand there. Big thing, obviously, there's grenade launch, which we didn't see before as well. Big thing, we've got a lasgun with a sling, which is pretty cool. There's even more, and that lasgun's got an eagle on it as well. So we are seeing that there's different patterns of lasgun, which is great. Big standouts for me, especially on this first squad, is firstly, we've got the grenade launcher. There's three big standouts. We've got the grenade launcher there, which is cool. Looks chunkier. Looks like a chunky grenade launcher. I don't know what you guys think, but that looks bigger than the current grenade launcher. For certain, very different pose as well. The next big one, of course, is we've got the sergeant here. Now, this sergeant is definitely wielding an auto gun of some kind. That confirms one of the rumors that we've talked about before. And he's also got a different cap design as well. We obviously saw the cap down here with the female head, but we've also got a male cap design up here. Obviously you can give your sergeant any kind of head design you want. You could give him one of these helmets if you wanted, but it's cool. I am not going to miss the sergeant head with the Lego Man haircut. That's not going to be something I'm going to miss. I'll probably be equipping most of mine with these field caps. One other thing which I quite like is there's a guy back here with a white shield helmet. That's a Cadian conscript helmet. I know that we're all worried that they might be getting rid of things like veterans or getting rid of things like conscripts, but there's a little nod here. He does have a conscript helmet. Okay, now maybe he's been brought, maybe the squad has lost a man and they've brought one up from the white shields. I don't know. But that to me hints that they won't be getting rid of conscripts. That's what it hints to me, because they've got the guy with the white shield hat right there. And, you know, GW, they've put time and effort into the Cadian fluff. You know, with the Cadian supplement that was only released about a year ago, they had loads of good rules for white shields and conscripts in there. It would be strange if they got rid of them. It would be strange if they got rid of them. We've already seen some rumors that have been proven and some rumors that have been disproved. For example, we now know that infantry squads will be able to take heavy weapons. So I'm hoping that the lack of conscripts one is definitely going to be something that gets disproved. And actually, there's loads and loads of conscripts. So that's sort of the main sort of big differences here. I would say that down here, we're seeing a lot more of what we've seen at the close-up pitch. It's guy running forward, firing lasgun there. It's pretty cool. You know, guy sort of walking forward a little bit more carefully there. But overall, we've seen a lot of these sort of choices already. But that covers everything that I wanted to talk about with these new Cadian soldiers. That is the deep dive going through all the differences between the current kit and this new upcoming kit. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. And if you think that I have missed anything sort of rules-wise or sort of modeling-wise, any key differences that you've spotted that I didn't point out, please let me know down in that comment section. If you're interested in seeing more of these deep dives, please consider subscribing to the channel to make sure that you never miss an episode. And if you've really enjoyed today's video and you want to go the extra mile when it comes to supporting the channel, then please think about becoming a channel member or Patreon supporter. It's thanks to the very generous support of my channel members and my patrons that I'm now able to do this gig full time and really get down into the nitty gritty of these new Guard releases. And I just want to take a moment now to say a big thank you to all of my latest channel members. So a huge thank you to Krug Dog, Zeal, David Hamlet, Doc Dragon, Traitor Gazman, Emir Saglebro, Bryn, John Hilton O'Brien, Josh Y Clinch Games, Funny Soup, Devin Johnson, Robert Miles, Alex Holt, Codester72, Far Beyond the Stars, Werewolf, Sinclair Haddo, David Lynn, Ali803, Sylvester of Terror, Dirty Mike, and the boys, Roland Vanderbog, Jaden Rugg, Skylar Nagel, Nico Atherius, John Sinclair, Kevin Farrell, Mr. Bullshark, Warmaster Will, Reedy Tamid, Aaron Ling, Star Union, S. Knight, Christopher Whitney, Travis Young, Baron Papa, and Jam Dowdy. Thank you all for becoming channel members. Thank you all for doing your part. I also want to say a big thank you to my latest Patreon supporters. So a huge thank you to Tech Guy 122, Hound the Red, Bradley J. Nemeski, Christopher Scott Withery Jr., Moon Prune, and 700th Black Templar. Thank you guys for your ongoing support on Patreon. One of the biggest perks of becoming a channel member or Patreon supporter is you get access to the Modding Glory Discord, and let me tell you, it is a very active community. Almost 500 active people, with 100 people in the Discord at any one point, and we've been discussing all of the rumors and the leaks and the new reveals. We've just been discussing them non-stop since Saturday. So if you want to get involved in that discussion, please consider joining the Modding Glory Discord. And last but certainly not least, I want to say a huge thank you to all of my top tier Patreon supporters. These guys are the War Masters, and I want to say thank you to them from the bottom of my heart. They have truly gone above and beyond the call of duty when it comes to supporting me. So a massive thank you and an 07 down in the comment section for Navy Veteran, Philip French, Ross Miller, Tequal, Alex Dengal, John Stubbs, Nicholas Walsh, Swordfish Trombone, Diesel Fox, Tom Sutton, and of course, Sly Varney, the one-man Super Chatting Army. Massive thank you to all of you guys. Your ongoing support really makes a massive, massive difference. I hope you've all enjoyed today's video. Thank you for watching, and of course, as always, I'll see you guys next time.